60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we report on undersea cables that were severed in the Baltic Sea on Christmas Day in 2024, an incident that triggered nationwide alarm in Finland. Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo received a phone call from the border guard that day.
I was told that we have problem with electricity cable between Finland and Estonia.
A critical undersea electric cable, S-Link 2, had been severely damaged 50 miles off the Finnish coast. The border guard suspected it had been deliberately severed by an oil tanker, the Eagle S. The ship had been dragging its anchor for 66 miles when the Prime Minister authorized special forces to intercept it. Police suspect the Eagle S incident was not an accident.
We had a strong reason to believe that it was an intentional activity from their side.
The Prime Minister says it may be part of a pattern of Russian aggression, like recent incursions into NATO airspace by Russian jets.
This is their way to try to harm us, make us afraid.
For this story, I worked with 60 Minutes producer Oriana Zil de Granados.
I felt it was an important story to cover because while we can't directly prove Russia's involvement, certainly Russia is involved behind the scenes with the shadow fleet. The US and EU and England and many other countries have sanctioned Russia because of the war. The Russian shadow fleet is actually hundreds of ships moving oil for Russia to places that will buy the oil at a price higher than the sanctions allow. And the main people who are buying this oil are China and India. We found that a major oil company in Russia, right after the sanctions were put into place, agreed in advance to lease these ships. In one example, they gave $35 million to lease a ship for 2 years. The broker used that $35 million to buy the ship. We worked on the investigation into Eagle S for about 7 months, and it was very hard to find out who actually owned the Eagle S and who was controlling it. But in the end, we came to believe that the Russian oil company that had leased it was actually controlling the Eagle S. Russia is selling just as much oil now as it was selling before the war, and that, according to the Finnish Prime Minister, is pumping money into Putin's war machine.
Is this Russia?
I can only say that there is clear connection between Russian shadow fleet and these incidents. It's clear. We didn't have this kind of incidents before war started in Ukraine. And when shadow fleets start to work by Baltic Sea, we have had these incidents.
One of the things we learned was that Eagle S was not the only incident where critical infrastructure near Finland, near Sweden, had been broken. In October 2023, a Hong Kong-registered feeding container, the Newnew Polar Bear, left Russia, and it was accompanied by a Russian cargo ship and sailed into the Baltic Sea. Finnish investigators say it damaged 2 telecoms cables and the Balticonnector gas pipeline by dragging its anchor along the seabed. In November 2024, the Yi Peng 3 left a Russian port with Russian fertilizer on board. It dragged its port anchor behind it for 1.5 days and severed 2 undersea data cables. In the vicinity of the second cable, it turned off its transponder, which provides the real-time location data for the ship. Risto Lohi is Detective Superintendent for the National Bureau of Investigation. He worked on the cases of the Yi Peng 3 and Newnew Polar Bear.
In both of these previous cases, we have been able to find out that those vessels at that time caused the damages to our critical infrastructure, but those investigations are still pending.
In the case of the Newnew Polar Bear, China said that the incident was an accident. It's very hard to prove what happens on the high seas. It's very easy for the crew and the captain and anyone who may or may not have been involved to say this was an accident, it happened by accident. British Admiral Keith Blount is the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of NATO.
Putting your anchor out, getting it on the seabed, and raking it through a series of cables is A, stupid, but B, something that you've got to really try hard to achieve.
The captain of the Eagle S says it was an accident. Is that at all credible?
That's not credible. I mean, anchors are designed to stop ships, right? Even just having the anchor out at the full extent of its length, it's still going to have an effect on the way the ship handles, the way the ship turns. I'm genuinely surprised that he should claim that to be the case.
Baltic Sentry is a new NATO operation that was stood up as a direct reaction to the Eagle S case in Finland. This is a new NATO operation using ships, planes, drones, and other types of smaller craft to monitor very closely the critical underwater infrastructure in the Baltic Sea and to monitor the Shadow Fleet and other commercial vessels that are going through the Baltic Sea day and night. And it's important to note Baltic Sentry was started in January, and we haven't seen any more cables broken since the end of January. You could argue that Baltic Sentry is working as a deterrent.
What is the message that Baltic Sentry is sending?
We're not going to be pushed around, interfered with. We're not going to be subject to illegal behaviours that either threaten the rule of law or worse, threaten the safety and security of our people.